Hello and welcome to the advanced tutorial on GREP. GREP styles can be used to apply character styles on your text automatically. You can see some examples over here, and we're going to explain in a lot of details how the GREP styles for those examples are working. I will give you now an introduction to each topic, and you can click on the names on the left side to jump to the specific topic. Also, in the top right corner of this video, there's a little box where you can click to jump back to this introduction every time in the video. We will start our GREP tutorial by introducing GREP, talking a little bit how to use it and going through some basic examples. Then we're going to talk about programming. If you have the source code you see here, how can you format it automatically to make it more readable? Next, we're going to talk about chemistry. If you have chemical formulas, I will show you how to create a GREP style that will set you numbers in subscript. And finally, we're going to talk about references. And for the references, we're going to develop a GREP style that will recognize the names of your authors and write them in small caps. So, if you're ready, we can start with our introduction. We have, as always, a sample document that we're going to use in this lecture. You can download this one on our website. And if we open it, we see it's just one page, but we have some paragraph styles and character styles predefined. When working with GREP, it's really useful to create some character styles that will just underline your text, like this. Or we have it also in yellow. And I'm going to show you how to create those things as well. So we're going to create another one that will be orange. We change the name of this character style to GREP orange. Go on edit. And in here, you want to activate underline. And in the underline options, we set this to 14 pt and the offset to -4 pt. Then we choose a color. In this case, we want to have orange, and we can go on OK. If you apply now this character style, we see it gets underlined orange. We clear all of those, and we can start with creating our first GREP style. GREP styles are only working on paragraph styles. This means, for example, basic text is a paragraph style we've applied to all our text here at the moment. And if you go on edit, you can in your paragraph style options go on GREP style and then here define your GREP style. You can go on new GREP style and we choose, for example, our orange. And at the moment we have something written in here. This will highlight all numbers. So you see 2003 is a number, so it gets recognized by the GREP style and highlighted here. Let's try to use this for something more useful. One tip to the beginning, you can double click in here and then you could edit this one, but it doesn't make much sense to edit it in here because you don't have much space and it also isn't very responsive. So if you want to edit something, we can cancel this for now. I would recommend to create a txt file. This one is now empty. Let's start with a really easy GREP style. Let's imagine you have Latin names in your text, for example, this one, and this is an organism you work with in your whole thesis. It could be this organism or it could be any name of a person or whatever. And with Latin names, we always want to have them italic, something like this. But instead of doing this all manually by hand and clicking on here, we can do this with a GREP style. Therefore, we're going to copy both Latin names. We go back to our txt and we paste them in here. I'm just going to increase the size so that you can see it better. And to use them as a GREP style, we need to get this OR symbol into a language that InDesign understands. And to do this, we need to insert, instead of an OR, a vertical bar. You create a vertical bar by pressing Alt and 7. This here is our vertical bar. This is everything we need for our first GREP style. We copy this again, and of course we save this file. And then we go back to our basic text. And here in GREP Styles, we're going to create a new GREP style. We paste this in, and this will look now for bellis perennis in our text. And also for urtica dioica, because we have here the or sign. We're going to pick the formatting italic, and as we have preview activated, we immediately see the effect. You have to watch out, however, this is case sensitive. So if we write this with a small case in the beginning, it wouldn't be applied. Let's try another example. If you have a special word that you want to have formatted, for example, tree, your T might be capitalized in the beginning of a sentence, or it might be small caps in the middle of a sentence. However, there is an easier way to write this. If we use brackets, we can type in a big T, and then our or symbol and a small t. So this will do the following. It will check, is the T big or is it small? And then is the R, E, E, so it gives tree as a whole. And it will recognize tree if it's small written or big written in the beginning of a sentence. To demonstrate this, we again bring it back to InDesign. Going to create a new style in here. We make this one orange. Can click on OK. And if you write now tree, it gets formatted, and also the small written tree gets formatted. The next examples are going to be more advanced but also more useful, and you can find those on my website, where you can also download this document we're using today, and you can copy them directly from here. So you see they're getting very long in the end, so it's not really worth it writing it down from the video if you can just copy them here. In our next example, we want to format some programming code. So if you're a programmer, you will enjoy formatting your stuff so that you can read it much better. And this formatting down here is done all by GRAP. So it's done all automatically just by this code over here that we need to bring into InDesign. However, as you can see, we use some color in here. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create new swatches in InDesign. We already have some colors in here, but I would like to create some custom colors, so we make sure they're only used for our GREP style and for nothing else. We start with an orange. You can double click on here to set the color more accurate. This should be fine. Click on add to swatch. Click on OK again. If you press this symbol, you get the color picker again. And then we want some blue color. Just going to adjust the color a little bit in here. Add to swatch. OK again. And then we finally need some green color. In the swatches panel, we have our 3 colors down here, and we want to rename them. And we're going to call this one GREP Programming Orange. We choose similar names for the other colors. Programming Blue and Programming Green. Now we can take care of the GREP style. If you remember, we set up some templates in our master page over here, and we also had a programming template. So we're going to copy the whole table, double click in here and press Command C, and we can go back to our page and paste the table in here. We are using a special paragraph style in this one, the programming style, and in this style we're going to add our GREP styles. You see now, here's a little bug we have. It shows us some GREP styles, but this one are the GREP styles we are using in basic text. I'm not sure why this happens, but it's displayed in here correctly. So we will try to just delete the one here. And we can create now new GREP styles. I'm going to my website, and we're going to copy the GREP styles from here. And to apply the colors, you need to create a character style first that includes the color. So we're going to call this one GREP Programming Blue. And in character color, you can choose a color. And we of course select in here our GREP Programming Blue. Click on OK. And if you look in your text, you see that the blue color is applied in here. We need to repeat this a few times till we have everything copied and all the character styles created we need for this. You also should make sure that the order from the styles here is the same as on the website to make this work perfectly. If we go on OK, we see now the whole text is formatted correctly. The formatting in here is just an example that resembles the code in the statistic programming language R, and it's very close to the formatting inside the programming editor, but you can alter this or use it for other programming languages as well, and you can change it however you want. I also want to point out that this one isn't complete, so it will not recognize all your words in here. For example, this one. If you use other functions in R, you might need to add them into your GREP style. So you would add them in here or in here, depending on the color you want. If you're interested in what all the GREP functions we are using right now are doing, you can stay with me and I'm going to explain them step by step. But if you don't care and you just want to go to the next example, you can click here and skip the explanation part. We have an overview of our GREP styles we used for the programming formatting. And we can zoom in on the top to start there. And we're going to break this down and I will explain each part. The first one are some brackets. And between the words we want to look for, we have our vertical bars that are acting as the or sign. This GREP style so far looks for these three words. So if we have in the text the word tail, it will be formatted blue. However, there's another expression that needs to be fulfilled to get this formatting. And this is the expression over here. The whole thing is a look behind. So we need to have something in addition to this word to get the formatting we want. And the expression is the question mark equals then what we want to look for, and we close it again with a bracket. We see inside here we do have another bracket, and the bracket is closed over here. Then we have basically two expressions. The first one is a space, and the other thing that we might want is a punctuation sign. In here, this could be everything like a point, a slash, a bracket, other forms of brackets, and so on. So why do I need all the things over here? The word itself should be recognized by this already. The problem becomes clear if you look at the second function. We are using the same principle again, and we have this little word if in here. And if you would now write a function that has a name that includes the if, you would get the wrong coloring. For example, let's assume our function is called funcIfs, and if we wouldn't have the part over here, it would recognize the if and color it orange or blue, depending where we have it written down. It's in this case over here. So to avoid this, we're going to add this tail over here that will sort out, in a lot of cases, the wrong coloring. However, as these functions over here often are the things we start with in programming, we can't look in front of the word because we don't have anything here. So we need to rely on this. This might not be perfect, but it still helps a little bit. But the best idea is to avoid using those things if you name your functions, like if or other things that are used in the programming language elsewhere. We can now look at the next example. Now we have this quite complicated expression. And the thing we want to start with is this one over here. This \d is one number. For example, 1 or 2 or 3 and so on. By adding a plus sign over here, we allow this number to have one or more digits. For example, 12 or 120. So this expression in the middle will recognize numbers from 1 till the infinity. And it will apply the green character style. However, we have some additions in here, because we not only have this style of numbers, we might have a point and a decimal number, something like this. To check for those things, we have an addition in here, and this is in this bracket. We are using a backslash to say that this point is actually a real point and not a function inside GRAP, because this can also be a specific function for something in GRAP. And then we use again our expression for a large or small number. By putting the whole thing in brackets and then adding a question mark, we can say this can be there 1 or 0 times. This means it can be there, but it also can be missing. So right now, if we write a 10, it gets formatted green, or if we write a 10.5, it also gets formatted as well in green. However, we also have plus or minus signs in front of this. So to check for those things, we have again an expression. The first one is a space and the question mark. So this means there can be a space, or the space can be missing. So between the plus sign and the number. And then we have our brackets, and we say it can be a minus sign, or it can be a plus sign. And again, we need the backslash to say that this plus sign is an actual plus sign. By putting those things in brackets and adding a question mark, we can again say the minus and plus can be missing, or it can be there. It doesn't really matter for our style. However, if it's there, it will get formatted green as well. We can go on to the next one. This one has some brackets around it. And those are telling InDesign that it should check for all things that are included here. So every time InDesign is recognizing one of those symbols in your text, it will be formatted blue. For example, those brackets, or an equal symbol, and so on. You need a lot of backslashes in here, because a lot of those things have a specific function in GRAP. So to say we have an actual bracket and not a function in GRAP that we want to call, we're using the backslash again to make sure it's interpreted correctly. In the last style, we're going to look at some other things we want to format blue. These are these arrows, and we divide them by the or symbol again. And then we also have the C, that is the actual letter. And then we use a bracket like this to create a vector that can contain, for example, some numbers. And we're telling InDesign that this bracket is a real bracket in our text and not a bracket we want to use inside GRAP, again by using a backslash. These are the GREP styles explained. It might be really confusing in the beginning, and you need to play around a lot to figure those things out, but don't give up. If it works, it's awesome. At this point, maybe a quick tip that I at least get often wrong. If you use brackets and so on, like this, make sure that you use a backslash and also that you use the right one and not confuse it with the normal slash, because this one will not work. Let's take a look at the second example. GRAP is really useful for formatting chemical formulas or reactions. You see the results down here. And we have a sample reaction that we're going to use today. Our sample reaction shows sulfuric acid that is dissolved in water, and it will release some hydrogen ions. This is a two-step reaction, and we want to make sure that we get the numbers in a lower case and also get the plus and minus signs a little bit up. Then we can also add the symbols for solid, liquid and dissolved in water. If we take a look in our box paragraph styles, we see we don't have a paragraph style for chemical formulas in here right now. So we can go to our master page template and we're just going to copy the box that we used for mathematical formulas. Then we go to our paragraph menu again and we're going to duplicate the math paragraph. We call this one Chem. In here we're going to add our GREP styles that we find on the website. We can click on OK and we're going to assign our new Chem style to this table. Then we also need to take care of the numbering because these at the moment are masked numbers. So we duplicate this style as well. And we call this one Chem numbers. In the numbering and bullets section, we of course need to define a new list. And we call this list box Chem. Can click on OK and on OK again. Now we assign this Chem style to this table. We can now go ahead and copy the chemical example from the website. And you see now it's not formatted. But if you paste it in here, it gets formatted automatically by GRAP. We want to place this one in the second line. Like this. At the moment our arrows are not perfect, so we're going to replace them with better arrows. You can select the line tool and press the shift key to draw a straight line. And we're going to make this line 1 centimeter long. Let's say it should have 1 pt thickness and of course a black color and no fill. We can add arrowheads over here. And I'm going to define a new object style for this one, so we can change the thickness of the line later on. We call this one Chem arrows. Can go and edit. In here we don't care about the fill and a lot of other things, so we can deactivate them. This one should be set to 0. In the stroke panel you can now change the width of this arrow later on, so it will apply automatically to all your arrows. I think 0.5 pt is fine. You can go on OK. You only need to watch out that you always use the length of 10 millimeters because we can't define the length by an object style. We're going to copy this arrow and going to rotate it by 180 degrees. And then we're going to copy them again, because for our reaction we want to have an arrow that points in both reaction directions. We need to use our align tool, and we're going to use the spacing of 0 millimeters. We can now copy our arrows into the text. To get the alignment of the arrows in our chemical reaction right, we actually need to create another object style, because the double arrows are a little bit higher than the normal arrow. The normal arrow fits good in here with the standard settings, but the double arrow doesn't, so we need to create a new style for the double arrow. We call this one Chem arrows double, and we're going to make it based on Chem arrows. We deselect almost everything, but we keep anchored objects options and we keep the stroke options. And then here we set this to minus 0.5 millimeters. Can click on OK and apply this to our arrows in here and also to this one. We can now change our thickness of the arrows still in Chem arrows. Like this, but we keep it at 0.5. the last arrow we might need is one with two heads. So we're going to create this one really quick. And now we have all the arrows we need on our master page as a template. So every time you need an arrow in your reaction, you can just copy them from here. We're going to take our finished table and copy it and put it onto our main page. Now it's time again to explain the details, how the grep functions in here work. Our first grep style takes care of those numbers here to make them subscript. To do this, the central part of this grep style is this one here. We have D, this is our number, and the number should be 1 digit to 3 digits long. So it recognizes a number like this, like 12, up to a number 999. This is made by this expression over here. This is what the grep style is recognizing. Then we have additional conditions that need to be fulfilled to get this grep style applied to our number. The first one is the look in front. This is a bracket, question mark, and then this symbol, what we should look for, and we close this again with a bracket. In here we have all our elements, our chemical elements, for example sodium, chlorine, and so on. And we have again our or symbols, and we have each element in a bracket, so also elements that consist of 2 letters can be recognized. So if we look over here, we have our 2, and then we have the hydrogen in front. This is this, so this is alright. And down here we have a look behind. This is indicated by this and closed here. And this look behind will look for the exactly same elements again, but in addition it will also look for a free space. It would be in a situation like here, where we have a space over here. Or it would also look for an opening bracket, because normally you would write this in the text in brackets as well, and then you have a for that is followed by a bracket. If we go back to our example, we have a sulfide in here, and we have the S over here, so this gets recognized as well. So both conditions, the look in front and the look behind, are fulfilled for our 2 over here, and it will get set subscript. It's important to remember that the look in front and look behind things are not actually the things that get affected by the grep style. It's only an additional condition that need to be fulfilled to actually get this thing formatted with our grep style. And the grep style formatting is down, so we get them in subscript, how we want. We can go on to the next example. If your chemicals have some charges, for example, hydrogen 3 oxygen plus, it's normally drawn in brackets, so you don't lose this one. And we need to format our plus sign in super subscript. Therefore, our grep style is looking for an opening bracket over here. Then it is looking for a number that can be there, but can also be missing. So if you would have, for example, a charge that is -2, this number can be there. Or if you have just a charge of -1, the number is missing. So it should recognize both cases. And of course then we have the minus symbol or the plus symbol. And we have this vertical bar over here that is acting as our or sign. So we can have minus or plus, it doesn't matter. It will both get formatted. In the end, we have our closing brackets. If all conditions are fulfilled, it will set our charge super subscript. So our hydronium ion that we write as this will end up this way. Then the last example is for our conditions of the elements or molecules. If you have our sulfuric acid, for example, it is solid, so you can add an S down here to indicate this. And you need to have this one in subscript again. To get this formatting, we're going to look for an opening bracket. And then we have several conditions that our elements can be in. And they're divided again by our or signs here. And finally, we have our closing bracket. And if InDesign finds something that meets the conditions, for example, hydrogen 2, and it's gas, like this, it will format it in subscript and pull this G down, so we end up with H2 and a G down here. The last set of GREP styles today will help us to format our references. If you look at these references right here, we would need to set every name in small caps and also set the et al. In italic. And this can be done all automatically by this few lines of code. So the first step is to copy all of those into our standard style basic text in InDesign. In here we actually can delete the old one we used for the introduction, because we don't need this anymore. This one we can keep for now. For the last GREP style, we need to create a new format. We call this one no small caps. And in basic formats, we set the case to normal. This one is useful if you have two names, like Bobby and Tom, and you want the end written down as end. You don't want the end to be formatted in small caps. So this is what this one takes care of. We can click on OK. And actually, to clean up our character styles a little bit, we're going to move all of those into our toolbox. Yeah, this looks much better. Oh, we have still the underline feature activated, so we need to deactivate this. You can go and edit in the character styles, and in basic formats we get rid of the underline selection. And also over here we see now underline is off. Can go on OK, and now the red background is gone. As you see right now, this is now formatted as it should be. And for demonstration we can also try out some other things. If we, for example, take our tree over here and add an add symbol in here and a date, like this. And then we add, for example, another references. This gets formatted automatically. You have very strict conditions that need to be fulfilled to get this formatting. We could just have something like we have two brackets and everything inside a bracket gets formatted in small caps. But this would apply to all things in brackets, and this wouldn't be very accurate, because sometimes in the text you want to have brackets and put some addition to your sentence to explain something or whatever. There are many uses for brackets other than using them for references. So the goal is really, with all GREP styles, to make them as specific as possible, because then you can use them for a lot of other things perfectly. Now it's time to look at the details of the GREP styles we are using in our basic text. I just want to warn you, this can get quite complicated. But we start easy with the first one. Et al. Is the thing we're looking for, and we want every et al. In the text to be italic, so we just write et al. And a point in our GREP style, and that's basically it. Then we can go on to the next one. This GREP style will apply small caps. And the first thing this GREP style is looking for is an opening bracket. So we have the look before, and this looks just for an opening bracket. Then we have this one here, and the W is standing for one letter. By adding a plus sign, we say we want at least one letter, but it could be more letters. So for example, one word, Tom, would be recognized. However, we have again our OR symbol, because we might have a name that is divided in two, something like this. And we might have a name that isn't connected by the sign, for example, Tom, Tommy. Therefore, we need the second expression here, and we indicate by question mark that this can appear 0 or 1 times. If we now look at the word here, we would start with an opening bracket over here. Then we have our first word. This would be this one. And here we have a space. This is a space here. And the second word. So far, everything is good. However, if you have a paper that you are citing that has two authors, you would add now an and symbol here. And then you have the same expression that we have discussed before, only that we have now two question marks. So this whole thing can be missing or it can be there once. And this will look again for a name that can consist of several parts. So for example, we could write again something like this. This would still match our GREP style. Then we start with the look behind over here. And we might have an et al in here, but this could also be missing. And then what we always need in any case is a digit that consists of 4 numbers. So it could be, for example, 2003. And we close it with a bracket in the end. By using all these question marks over here, we can make sure that our GREP style will detect a lot of variations, but still remain very flexible. Because in the end, all this part can be missing, but it can be there as well. So if we only have written Tom 2003, the Tom here would still get formatted. Let's take a look inside InDesign and see what we discussed in action. We're going to select a color in here, for example orange, and click on OK. And now we see the GREP style we talked about. In here, if we delete this one, we still get the formatting, the orange one, and we can add an et al. And only if this matches the GREP style exactly, we get the formatting we want. This will automatically force you to be very consistent with your citations. You also recognize that brackets that contain several references are not affected by this particular GREP style. To format this citation, we need to look at another GREP style. Now we're looking at a GREP style that should figure out if we have a bracket that contains several citations. So something like this. Then it would format the Tom and the Bob in small caps. We start our GREP style by using a look before. And this one will look for a bracket or a space. Then we have our word that we need to have. There's no question mark over here. And then we add a lot of words and our end sign that we could have, because we might have Tom and Tom again. So right now our GREP style would look for a part like this, but would also recognize something like this. Then we continue with the look behind, and the look behind is starting already here, and the look behind is ending right here. So this is a really big one, and what this is doing is it's checking first if we have an et al in here and if we have a number. You realize we need to have this number. There is no question mark or something else here. So this is always the number here or the number here. And then we also need a comma here. This is also really important because we divide our citations with a comma in our brackets. After this one, we're looking again for a word. The first word, as always, we need to have this one. So this could be our Tom. And then we have again the whole thing until here are other words that could be in addition to this word. Also, the et al is optional, but then we need to have our number. So this could be the number over here. So let's write down an example and see which parts this style would format. Let's take a look at the first word. We have our opening bracket and our Tom. This would be this part plus this word here. Then we have our et al. And this already is starting the look behind here in this direction. You need to remember the whole look behind is not formatted. It gets excluded. Because this is an extra condition that needs to be fulfilled to get the formatting over here. So in this case, we would get our Tom formatted because all these things here match with our look behind. The same holds true for our Bobby here. But then our last citation would not be formatted because this one doesn't have a comma here and doesn't have another name here. So the look behind does not match. Therefore, we need to have another GREP style that takes care of the last citation in our brackets. But let's first take a look at our current GREP style in action. We will make the GREP style we worked on again orange and click on OK. And now we see all our citations in the bracket gets formatted, except the last one. And this one is the one we take care of next. This GREP style will take care of our last citation in our brackets. We start with the look before. In this one, we look for our number, the comma, and a space. We always have those things present over here. Then we are looking again for our word. We need at least one word, but we can have some more in addition. Also the and sign and some other words. And then we have our look behind. This one is starting here and ending over here. We can have, as always, our et al. Then we need to have our number. This is the 2010 over here. And the really important thing is that we have a bracket as our last thing. The bracket is the one over here. This one will take care in the look behind that we only formatting this part. We not care about this because we don't have brackets here. We can see this in action as well. We are selecting the red color and click on OK. And now we see only the last citation in our bracket gets formatted. The last GREP style we're going to talk about is the one that will exclude this and symbol. And if we look in our GREP style, we also see that this GREP style is the last one in our GREP style panel. So this has the highest priority and overrides all GREP styles before, if they match the same conditions. The key thing in this GREP style is this and symbol. We again have the backslash to tell InDesign this is an actual and symbol, like this one here, and not a symbol that is used specifically in GREP. We use a look before to look for one letter from the word, in this case the M, and one space. Then we are using the look behind to look for at least one word. This would be Bob right here. And there might be additional words, and also there might be an et al. However, there always had to be the year of the publication. If these conditions do match, only the and symbol gets the format applied by GREP. And in this case, the format is that we have no small caps applied because the case is normal. This doesn't really matter if you have an and sign, but if you want to replace your and sign by the word and, you would delete this one here and write down and, like this. And if you would have a citation that has an and in it, InDesign would use the other GREP styles to format these parts in small caps, but the and would be excluded and would stay a normal and. However, if you replace the end symbol by the written end, you need to make sure to replace the end symbol in all other GREP styles as well with the written end. We can see this now in action. I replaced the end in all other GREP styles, and if you look at our formatting, we see that the end would be included and would be formatted as small caps. However, if we activate this style right here, we choose the yellow color, can click on OK, we see that the end is excluded. Exactly what we want. Alright, this was our GREP style tutorial for today. If you have any questions, you can post them in the comments. And if there are enough questions, I might do a follow-up video on this one. So, see you next time. Bye bye.